Hello there, my name is Solmaz, and you are listening to Tabling Thoughts podcast. In this podcast, I talk about my experiences as a relationship coach and psychotherapist. The little things that I noticed in my clients' day to day lives, which may affect the quality of their lives and relationships enormously, and for some reasons, they don't pay that much of attention to them. As I mentioned, I'm a relationship coach and I also practice as a psychotherapist in Ontario, Canada. In order to get more information about me, you may check my Instagram account, YouTube, or my other podcasts via the links in description. This is the 36th episode of Tabling Thoughts podcast, published in August 2025, and we are gonna explore the most critical question in our relationships. Why do I keep falling for emotionally unavailable people? A deep dive into emotional patterns, attachment wounds, and how to reclaim your self-worth in love. Why do I keep falling for emotional unavailable people? You know, the kind that is charming, mysterious, intense, and then suddenly distant, inconsistent, or completely gone. And if you have ever asked yourself, why do I always end up chasing people who won't choose me back? Why do I feel addicted to someone who barely shows up? Why does it hurt more if they just left? Today's episode is for you. We are going to unpack this pattern. Emotionally unavailable partners through a psychological lens, through lived experience, and I will also share practical tools to begin rewriting this story. So let's start with something honest and tender. It's not your fault, but it's your pattern. And patterns can be changed. So let's start with this question. What is really the meaning of an emotionally unavailable person? Before we dive deeper into the why, let's take a moment to really understand what emotional unavailability looks like. At its core, an emotionally unavailable person is someone who cannot or will not practice in emotionally intimate, vulnerable, or challenging relationships. This doesn't necessarily mean they are bad people. Often they are wounded, overwhelmed, avoidant, or just not in a space where they can safely connect. They might be successful, funny, attractive, or even kind, but when it comes to emotional presence, they disappear. This can show up in a few different ways. Some are hot and cold. One day they're all in, texting you constantly, making future plans, expressing deep interest. The next day they pull back, get distant, and become hard to reach. You start questioning everything. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Should I do something to fix this? Others may be more subtle. They don't ghost, but they never fully show up either. They avoid meaningful conversations. They deflect with humor. They keep everything surface level. They don't ask about your inner world, your feelings, your dreams, your fears. You could spend hours together and still feel completely unknown. And then there are those who say all the right things but never follow through. They talk about wanting a relationship. They tell you you are special. They drop breadcrumbs of affection, just enough to keep you hanging on. But when it comes to take a step forward, commitment, consistency, depth, they stall. There is always an excuse. I'm just not in the right headspace. I have been hurt before. I need to focus on work. It's not you, it's me. And because they seem sincere, you believe them. You want to be the exception. You want to be the one who breaks their walls down. Here is where it gets even trickier. Some emotionally unavailable people are unaware that they are unavailable. They genuinely think they're doing their best. They might even feel overwhelmed by how intense you are, when really they're just not used to someone wanting real connection. Others know they're unavailable and they will even tell you, they will say, I'm not good at relationships. Or, I always ruin things. Or, I'm bad at commitment. And yet, they still pursue you. It's confusing because one part of them does want closeness, but a deeper part of them fears what closeness demands: vulnerability, accountability, intimacy. So they create this dance: one foot in, one foot out. And if you're not careful, you start dancing too. You start adjusting your steps to match theirs. You start shrinking your needs so you don't scare them away. Before you know it, you are in a one-sided relationship, over giving, over analyzing, over functioning, while they under deliver. And here is the worst part. You might not even realize they're emotionally unavailable because you have normalized the distance. Because maybe deep down you are used to loving people who never fully love you back. Let's ask the honest question here. Why? Why do we smart, self aware, loving people keep chasing emotionally unavailable partners? Why do we fall so hard for the ones who pull away? Why do we keep trying to convince people who clearly aren't ready to love us back? Let me offer a truth that's difficult but also deeply compassionate. You are not drawn to them because they're right for you. You are drawn to them because they are familiar. You see, my friend, love isn't just about attraction or compatibility. It's about recognition. What feels emotionally familiar based on our earliest experiences with love and attachment. If you grew up in an environment where emotional connection was unpredictable, conditional, or inconsistent, that becomes your baseline. Maybe a parent was physically present but emotionally distant. Maybe they loved you but only when you behaved a certain way. Maybe they provided, but they didn't see you. Maybe they were nurturing one day, dismissive the next day. Or maybe they were overwhelmed themselves and you learned to suppress your needs so you wouldn't become a burden. Over time, your nervous system learns to associate love with longing, with anxiety, with proving yourself, with performing for connection. So, what happens when you meet someone who's warm one minute and cold the next? Who shows you just enough to get your hopes up but never follows through? Your subconscious mind says, this feels familiar. This is what love must be. My friend, you're not lazy, you're not broken, you're not addicted to pain. You are simply responding to a blueprint you didn't know you were following. And that blueprint was written when you were too young to know the difference between survival and self-worth. It goes way deeper. If you were praised for being strong, low maintenance, independent, you might have learned that needing others made you too much. So now, even in your adult relationships, you pick people who can't meet your needs because then you never have to risk being needy. If you were told you were mature for your age, the peacemaker, or the caretaker in your family, you may now feel more comfortable working for love than simply receiving it. You might even feel anxious or unworthy when people does show up with stable love because it doesn't activate that familiar tension. Healthy love can feel boring at first, not because it's boring by nature, but because your nervous system is so used to chaos. You may say he's too nice or I don't feel chemistry. But what you're really saying here is this doesn't feel like the roller coaster I have mistaken for love. And here is the hard truth. Until we rewire the internal map, we don't choose what's healthy. We choose what's familiar. Even when it hurts, even when it leaves us feeling unchosen, confused, or invisible. So when you ask yourself, why do I fall for emotionally unavailable people? Try asking a deeper question. What does emotional unavailability protect me from? Sometimes the answer is it protects me from the risk of being truly seen. It protects me from intimacy I never learned how to receive. It protects me from having to admit that deep down I don't believe I'm enough. Or even it gives me the illusion of love without the vulnerability of love. Yes, you see, these relationships aren't random. They're revealing something. They're showing you where your heart still carries unmet needs, where your body still holds protective responses, and where your soul still seeks repair. So, no, my friend, you are not broken for craving people who run, but you are being invited to stop calling chaos chemistry and start creating a new pattern that feels like actual safety. I'm gonna step into the science for a moment. It may be really interesting for you. When we are involved with someone who is inconsistent, someone who gives affection in bursts, then pulls away, our brain starts to get hooked, not just emotionally, but neurologically. This kind of dynamic creates what psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement, and it's one of the most powerful behavioral hooks known to humans. Here is how it works. Imagine you are in a casino. You're gonna play with a slot machine. You pull the lever, nothing. You pull it again, nothing. You add some more money, again, ding ding, you win a little. Not enough to walk away with your dreams, but enough to keep you playing, right? That's what it's like being in a push pull relationship with someone who is emotionally unavailable. You don't know when the next high will come, the warm text, the loving hook, the weekend getaway, the sudden closeness, but you wait for it like your happiness depends on it because your nervous system has learned when they show up, I feel alive. When they leave, I feel abandoned. So you keep chasing that high. You try harder, you give more, you rationalize their distance by saying they're just stressed, they have been through a lot, this isn't who they really are. You know what's the painful irony? The more inconsistent they become, the harder you try. And the harder you try, the more they retreat, either emotionally or physically. This push-pull cycle creates the dopamine spikes in your brain, which is the same neurochemical release in addiction. Dopamine makes you crave, chase, hope, repeat. And just like a gambler waiting for the next jackpot, you begin to live off moments of connection instead of consistent love. Eventually, you are not even relating to a person. You're relating to the idea of who they could be. If only they were always like those rare, sweet moments. But relationships shouldn't feel like that gambling kind, my friend. You shouldn't have to guess when love is coming. You shouldn't feel anxious when your phone buzzes. You shouldn't have to work this hard to be seen. If you find yourself constantly trying to win someone's love, it's time to ask, is this love or is this an emotional slot machine? Let's pause for a second, my friends, and take a breath. Because this part matters more than you might realize. Sometimes the person you're trying to love is emotionally unavailable. Full stop. Not because you triggered them, not because you were not good enough, not because the timing was slightly off, not because you are too sensitive, too intense, or too much, but because that's just where they are in life right now. Emotionally blocked, avoidant, distracted, fearful, overwhelmed, underdeveloped, or simply uninterested in building real intimacy. And that's the truth. It can be both heartbreaking and freeing. It's heartbreaking because we want to believe that if we just love someone the right way, they will come around. That if we are patient enough, kind enough, low maintenance enough, they will finally see our worth and rise to meet us. We want to believe we can be the exception, the healing force that opens their heart. But it's freeing because once we accept that someone's emotional unavailability has nothing to do with us, we stop internalizing their limitation as our personal flaws. Their distance is not a reflection of your worth. Their inconsistency is not proof that you're not lovable. Their fear of connection is not your fault. So many of us, especially women, especially helpers, have been conditioned to believe that other people's emotional problems are ours to fix. That love is sacrifice. That caretaking is connection. That if someone is distant, we must done something wrong. But here is the truth you probably weren't taught. You are not a rehab center for the emotionally unavailable people. You are not their therapist. You are not their healer. You are not their emotional practice run. You are not a halfway house for people who don't know how to love but want the benefits of being loved. Sometimes people can't meet you where you are because they're not there yet, or they don't want to be. And no amount of over-explaining, proving, waiting, or hoping can change that. Those who are in relationship with narcissistic people, they have felt and experienced and lived every single sign that I'm talking about. Here is what I want you to hear deep in your bones. You do not have to shrink to be accepted, my friend. You do not have to lower your standards to feel chosen. You do not have to explain your needs like they are burdens. You do not have to earn the bare minimum for someone who is emotionally unavailable by nature. Let's take this even further. When someone is emotionally unavailable and you stay trying harder, giving more, justifying their behavior, you are teaching your nervous system to equate love with pain, with confusion, with instability, with self-abandonment. And over time, that becomes your default. Not because you want to, but because it's familiar. But what if you could pause, step back, and say, this isn't about me. This isn't something I caused, and it's not something I can cure or heal. That right there is where healing begins. It begins when you stop overfunctioning, when you stop rewriting your personality to fit someone else's limitation, when you stop waiting for someone to change instead of choosing someone who is already emotionally available. So no, emotional unavailability is not your mirror. It's their wall. And your job is not to tear down walls that were built long before you arrived. Your job is to walk away from spaces that keep you out, to stop making your emotional health dependent on someone else's growth timeline. You don't need to chase love that runs. You don't need to fix people who don't ask for help. You don't need to absorb someone else's wound and wear it like a personality trait. You just need to remember their problem isn't your identity. Their wall isn't your prison. Their silence doesn't cancel your worth. You are allowed to want more. You're permitted to leave. You're allowed to stop trying so hard. And you're allowed to save your softness for someone who needs it, not drains it. My friend, the longer you stay in relationships with emotionally unavailable people, the more your sense of self becomes entangled in confusion, shame, and self-doubt. You start wondering, why am I never enough? What's wrong with me that they won't choose me? Why do I feel like I'm too much and not enough at the same time? It's so confusing. That's because emotional unavailability often triggers core wounds, especially, as I told you, if you have ever felt ignored, invisible, or unimportant in childhood. So, how to begin breaking this pattern? How to break free? It starts with this core truth: you're not here to earn love. You're here to receive it freely. Here is few things and techniques that I work with my clients. First step, I always tell them to name the pattern. I ask them start writing down their past experiences and past relationships. Look for themes. Did they avoid intimacy? Did they send mixed signals? Did you feel like you had to prove your worth? The second step is grieving the fantasy, meaning that let go of who you wanted them to be. Mourn the version of the relationship that never actually existed. This step takes a while for many of my clients, especially those who have been the victims of narcissistic personality disorder. The third step is reconnect with your body. Your body often knows before your brain does. Did you feel safe around them? Could you relax? Were you constantly anxious, checking your phone, rereading texts? And the fourth step is create new standards. Write a list of how you want to feel in love. Not just what your partner should do, but how your nervous system should respond. Practice choosing boring. Healthy love can feel boring at first because it's unfamiliar. But safety, consistency, and kindness are not boring. They are the soil where the intimacy grows. And my friends, make sure you get support, whether through therapy, coaching, or community. Healing attachment wounds isn't a solo job. You need co-regulation. You need to be seen in a safe space. So, my friend, if you're listening to this and thinking, this is me, I want you to pause. Place your hand over your heart. Take a breath. And know that this pattern doesn't define you. It just describes where you are right now. I'm going to emphasize that. You're not broken. You're not unlovable. You're just learning what really love looks like. And yes, that means grieving the rush of the chase. It means learning to stay with the slow warmth of real intimacy. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to win someone over and over and over. You deserve a love that arrives, stays, and grows with you, not one you have to chase. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Tabling Thoughts podcast. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear your story. Send me a DM, share the episode with a friend, or tag me in your reflections. And if you are ready to break this pattern in your own life, you may start with the 5 steps I provided you at the end of this episode. And remember, we can do it together. Until next time, stop chasing, start choosing,